Well, g'day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Season 2 of Adelaide Conservatives. As always, I'm your host, Simon McMahon. I'm here with my co-host, Luke Munro.
Hello.
It's been a pretty big time. This is the first episode on the flip side of the Voice referendum. And I tell you what a convincing result it was for Australia.
Oh, look, yeah, we've been, even in the first season, we were talking about like months out that I think this was pretty inevitable. What really surprised me is that people on the yes side, even right up to the last day, still thought they had a chance of winning. And it was almost delusional.
Well, I was on the booth at the Seaford Rise Primary School.
Yep.
That normally gets about 2,300 votes in a federal election. It's heavily Labor. You know, I've handed Liberal had a vote cards there before, and it's a pretty tough territory to be as a Conservative. It was a completely different feel. That place, I could tell everyone was voting no. It was one of the biggest no booths. So it was a bit of a sign that maybe the feeling in the suburbs is quite different to the inner city.
Well, yeah, that's right. And I think if he learns from this at all, Albo needs to learn. I don't think he's capable of it, but what he needs to learn from this experience is in Grainler, the folks there are very, very different to the folks in Kingston or the folks in the outer suburbs of any of our capital cities. I think it just the whole process just showed a real disconnect between inner city elitists and the average Australian battler. And not all the average Australian battlers are Conservatives by any stretch of the imagination, but they are very, very different to the people that are constituents of Anthony Albanese.
Well, we sat in this spot when the Voice referendum was first starting to be discussed. Liberal Party still had not officially made their stance if they were going to support the Voice or not. We sat here with Senator Alex Antic. He was really opposed to it right from the start. Actually, it was a day before the Liberal Party room vote in Canberra.
That's right, yeah.
If they were going to decide it right, and were urging the party. And I think that's maybe one of the myths that came out that, all the Conservatives were just following what the Liberals were saying, towing the party line. I think it was quite the opposite. I think it was a grassroots movement of Conservatives in this country were pleading on the elected leaders of their parties to go up against this, to stand with moral conviction and be a no.
Yeah, I think it's funny that, and even people in my own family, had debates with and arguments with about this whole process. They seem to think that this was some deception program from Peter Dutton and Jacinta Namatjira-Price, and he fooled us all and all that sort of. She fooled us all and all that sort of thing. Well, if that was true, Albo's in a lot of trouble at the next election. If it was by that level of genius in campaigning and misinformation that you can get 65, or probably end up being 65% of the country saying, "No, this is a shit sandwich."
Yeah, it's what I've been telling my family and friends that have been saying, "Oh, this is all because of Peter Dutton and his Trumpian tactics, misinformation and lies and all that sort of thing."
If that's true, he's a genius.
Well, what I'm saying to them is, 35 to 40% of Labor voters voted against this. If Peter Dutton has ability to look down the camera and convince 35 to 40% of Labor voters, considering they only got 33% primary to form government, they're in serious trouble. I don't think that's what it is. I think
we can only hope. We can only hope, but like reality, which most people in the Yes campaign or that have just been sycophants for anything to do with Yes over the last few months can't understand. That the reality is that the average punter just saw through this thing from the outset. They just saw that this was, like, it didn't give any tangible way or offer any tangible way that it was going to actually help Indigenous communities, Indigenous people.
Oh, and to me, the misinformation was coming from the Yes campaign.
Absolutely.
A no voter was somehow against the Aboriginal people of this country. It was quite the contrary. I voted no, and I was really clear to some of the Aboriginal leaders that I know. I was voting no because I have a steadfast commitment to treating Aboriginal Australians, Torres Strait Islanders, migrants, everyone as absolute equals, and that's what the Constitution's there for.
But having said that, some of those leaders voted no as well. So that whole misconception through the whole thing that 80% of Indigenous people want this. Yeah, they might have won a straw poll of 300 people back in January, but that's
back when 70% of the country was also supporting.
That's correct. And that's just like the Indigenous people that I deal with on a regular basis. none of them wanted this. And now they didn't want it for different reasons, but generally speaking, they were like, we don't understand what this is going to do to improve the lot of Indigenous Australians. And that's really what it came down to. It's just hope.
This isn't anything new we're telling you guys out there. So we thought we might just do a little bit of a breakdown of the numbers and then focus on what that means specifically for South Australia being a Labor
Labor stronghold, really.
This is a Labor stronghold. Yeah. By the end of this term of state government, 20 out of the past 24 years would have been Labor governments in this state, and we were in the end the second highest no vote in all the states. Let's go through it here. The national vote, no was 60.7%, yes 39.3%. You're looking in the 30s for the yes support here. New South Wales had 59.6% no. Queensland was a massive 68.93% no.
It's always going to be.
South Australia was the biggest surprise for me. I had us at about 56% no was my sort of thought process leading into the referendum day.
Yeah, that's roughly what I would have guessed. I didn't expect the numbers that came out.
But 64.62%. Only 35% of South Australians supported Anthony Albanese's Voice of Division. In Tasmania, Tasmania was a state that the campaign was targeted.
They'd already penciled that in,
59.3% no.
Yeah.
Victoria, the Victorian state over there under Daniel Andrews, luckily no more.
Well, no more, no. That's something that's changed since we were last week.
97% no. If you can't win Victoria in a referendum with a leftist agenda, you are in serious trouble.
To start with, I can't understand. There's a lot of factors in this. I can't understand the miscalculation from the Yes campaign, like just how deluded they were. It was like a cult, like that they thought that this is just we'll throw another couple of $100 million at it, and this is just all going to come to us. They dragged out John Farnham. They had Shaq to start with. They dragged out all these celebrities. They dragged out all these footballers that half the people in the country have never heard of. And it was just like, at what point did someone should have gone, this is over. Stop spending the money. But they just kept going right up to the last minute. They just kept going. But they someone in there had to have enough wits about them to know that this thing was over.
It was over by a long shot. And
it was over 3 months ago.
The Albanese had to know that. He's a smart man. He has some really clever political advisors around him. The polls were, and it's not just one poll. Every poll was trending down. They were having no good results. So make no mistakes. Anthony Albanese went to this referendum knowing it was going to divide the country.
Yep.
Knowing that it was going to lose, and knowing that it was going to cause great harm to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people if this vote was a no vote. And knowing that...
Well, not all of them, but yeah, probably, let's say 55, 60% of them, yes, they're going to go, oh, geez, the rest of Australia hates us still.
Yeah, but the others are still going, well, why are we going through this? Why is my people having to go through
Yeah.
So whether they're voting yes or no, it was putting them in a position where they didn't really want to be in. And
No.
So it was as a leader whose job it is to unify a country, the fact that he went ahead with it when every sign was pointing to no, he knew he didn't have bipartisan support. He did have bipartisan support to put constitutional change for recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. That would have been a pretty unifying moment for the country, maybe about 80% yes. We would ever know now. He decided not to go down that road and to divide us, because I honestly believe when he saw this at the start of the year and he had 70% of Australians supporting it, and Peter Dutton came to him and said, I can't support this version. Let's work together a bipartisan approach for something else. He saw an opportunity to go, if I can get Peter Dutton as this ultra-right conservative that only 30% of the country is going to support, 70% will be with me, this is my moment to really push down on him.
Look, it's like everything the left does. There's always an ulterior motive. This was about ideology, and this was about politics. There was nothing more to it. And I think you're right. Once Peter Dutton, Nationals first, and then once Peter Dutton had said that, no, we just can't go along with this, he saw an opportunity. And I just think, he should have pulled out of it once he saw the wheels starting to fall off.
Yeah.
Like all of his advisors surely were telling him, Albo, this is going to be bad.
It's one of the things that we said when he was first elected. Opportunities will come for Conservatives in this country if they're prepared to stand up by their moral conviction, because Anthony Albanese, although he was a small target in the election itself and he didn't put too many radical policies forward, he's a member of the left faction. They own him, the unions own him, and he won't be able to say no to these people. And that's what you saw in the lead-up to the referendum, the Marcia Langdons and Noel Pearsons that were probably in his advisory group saying, no, we need to go ahead with this. We've got the support, no compromise position.
Yeah.
He is fully indebted to these people, and he could not change. He could not pivot or alter in the interest of the country. And that's a really sad place to be.
No.
And as a Conservative, we were happy with the result on the referendum night, but I didn't feel good going into the booth and having to write no. I didn't want to have to be voting on my fellow Australians.
I did.
In a way. I was happy to vote no in terms of the concept, but I wasn't happy that I had to go and vote an issue. No, we should not be even happening. We should not be having this
I was irritated that I had to go in to vote for something that was, in my opinion, a foregone conclusion and it was going to do no good at all. And really, in reality, no matter what the outcome, it was going to do no good at all.
Yeah.
Like you said about when you were on pre-poll, when I went in to vote, you sometimes you just have a vibe, and I voted in Colonnades, and when I went in there, very very left wing area, I'm pretty sure 70% of the people strolling through their vote for Labor, but I just had that vibe that this was not going well. The poor woman handing out the how to vote yes things, I felt sorry for her because everyone walked past her, they were ignoring her, or they were sort of back chatting her and stuff like that. And I was like, oh no, this poor woman.
It was the difference that I felt on referendum day. So I was there wearing my Vote No shirt. I had the Vote No how to vote cards, which is, I couldn't understand why you need a how to vote.
No. Well, that's a silly thing about the how to vote thing. So I don't really know. I mean, I think they were just there to try and it was almost like
there
was a guilt trip. It was like, you want a yes how to vote? Oh yeah. Well, that way you didn't take one, you bastard.
I think the people that were supporting no was smart enough and intelligent to realise that that's what people felt. So I would sit back and I wouldn't put people flies like, here's how to vote, no, here's how to vote, no. I would stand back and if someone wanted to come to me, if there was an undecided voter that wanted to have a chat about what was the position, or they just wanted to take that pamphlet in there because they were a bit unsure how the actual ballot would look, then if they came to me, I would give them the card. On the flip side, the Greens were staffing the voting booth down here in the south. They were very much in the face. Here's how to vote yes, here's how to vote yes. The number one comment that I heard in reply was, I don't need a how to vote card to put down 2 letters. And as soon as they said 2 letters, their demeanour changed. They just started ignoring those people, and then they went on to the next person.
You racist bastards.
No, thank you. It wasn't. They didn't say those things directly. But
I was thinking it.
There was no thank you, have a good day. It was and I think they knew pretty early on that
it was going to be a bad day.
It was going to be a bad day. So
yeah,
when we have a look at it for the state perspective, I called you at about, I think, 8 o'clock on referendum night when we realised what the result was going to be. We had a bit of discussion about it.
I think we knew an hour before that. It was crystal clear by 8 o'clock.
We knew about 3 months before that. Yeah. So what we were really interested to see is the booth by booth result. Around 8 o'clock, 8:30 on referendum night,
started coming through. Yeah,
every seat in South Australia, every federal seat was a resounding no, bar 2 on the night. So the 2 on the night were Boothby, which is the most marginal seat in the South Australia. You'd expect that to maybe be more contested, and the seat of Adelaide again in the city.
Yeah.
As soon as the pre-poll numbers started coming in, the postal votes in particular, they went right the other way, and even those 2 seats in the city, Adelaide, and Boothby.
That's 55-45 now.
Yeah.
They're both 55-45, close to that, I think, now.
So, yeah.
I mean,
all of the older voters are doing postal votes. Clearly a resounding percentage of them was in the flip side. So every seat in South Australia has now officially been declared a no. We have a look at ministers like Amanda Rishworth here, where we are at the seat of Kingston. 65% no.
Yeah.
It is massive. So you have a look at the seat of Kingston. May as well start there. It's made up of the state seats of Raynell, Hurdle Vale, Garner, Davenport, all held by strong Labor long-term staunches in terms of Katrine Hilliard, Chris Picton, Nat Cook. Erin Thompson has just picked up in the last election Davenport. That's should be a Conservative or a Liberal seat. and it does have a bit of black as well, where David Spears is. It's the only bit of blue coming into that big territory there. The fact that they could not hold on a vote there tells you the gap between what the Labor Party, who are going further and further to the left, versus South Australia, what is a Labor state, but what you could call an old school Labor state. They're more of conservative right wing Labor than
South Australia,
mob in the eastern states.
South Australia is more of I guess, an old school DLP state. Like no Labor government has won here based on a overly progressive agenda. Yeah, they've all been most like I look at Malinaskis and I think he's probably more conservative than the leader of the opposition in Victoria or New South Wales, for that matter. And I mean, and that's shameful.
Yeah.
I'm glad I'm not living in New South Wales or Victoria, because if you are a conservative, where do you go? Well, you can't go to the Liberal Party.
And that's where are people parking their votes? It would be.
Well, that's why in New South Wales you see One Nation always does really well. The shooters and fishers do well because people are going, I can't stomach this crowd anymore.
I'm hoping one of the things that this referendum has shown Liberals and Conservatives in leadership positions, that if you actually stand up to your moral compass, stand up to the reason why you are a Conservative in the first place, it doesn't matter if the current polls are telling you that 70% of people are against that position. Your job is to sell your beliefs. That's what a politician should be. It's not migrating to what I think is the most popular thing and which way the wind's blowing. This is who I am. This is what I believe in. I'm going to sell that message as much as I can. You can either vote for me or you can't. It's up to you as an individual. But I'm going to stay true to my morals. And that's where Conservatives perform best. And this is what got shown in the referendum. That big swing.
Well, that's right. I think the Liberal Party as a whole, especially at a federal level, they need to learn from this too. Like when you've got the leaders of the opposition in Victoria, New South Wales, and even the Premier of Tasmania saying that they support the voice, there's something wrong here, And it just shows that some of those more moderate leaders of the Liberal Party are out of touch too. Like they spend way too much time in their CBDs.
Yep.
Like they are out of touch. And now from a federal level, I think the Liberal Party's really got to go back to their grassroots, which is your business people and people in the outer suburbs, which are coming to the Liberal Party now, and people in the regions. I mean that's where they've got to concentrate, because they're never going to win. They're never going to win inner city Melbourne or inner city Sydney or Brisbane seats.
And I think if they keep on going down the Labor Party, the more left agenda, you'll start to see the mortgage belt. So places like, sort of gets up to Hallett Cove, that's where David Spears will hold a mortgage area, families, small businesses. That's going to filter through to the areas like Seaford and Aldinga. That'll eventually happen, where younger families are moving there. They're disengaged with what the inner city elites are thinking. That mortgage belt is an area of long-term gain for the party. But seats like Devonport have to be won back.
Oh, that's got to be in play, and especially how Erin Thompson, like every second post, she's banging on about this voice and getting photoshopped with all the voice supporters and everything like that. I'm like, that's I don't know who was advising her, but that's a pretty dangerous thing to do in a seat like Devonport.
When you look at the pre-poll in Devonport, I saw some of the numbers. It was like 4,500 no to 2,300 yes. No, it's an older demographic, a more conservative demographic. They've traditionally been either liberal or independent with Bob Such.
Yeah, Bob Such was a pretty
local member
guy anyway. So.
But also he was a hardworking local member that really cared about the local community. Yeah. So he was always going to hold that vote. This is the first time it's come over to the Labor Party as a first termer. Now her community would have been about maybe 68% against her position. That's an area that the Liberals need to really start targeting. Would definitely be in Devonport. But King, Newland, all those other ones, Gibson, they should be Liberal bread and butter. Waite would be another one. I mean, Waite has to come back to the Liberal Party. The fact that we lost Waite is atrocious. They're the target seats. I think David Spears, as a leader, he would have to win back at least 2 or 3 of those seats. to remain the leader after.
He's got to win more than that.
To win government, he's got to win more than that. But
But I think
two or three of them,
and to keep his job, he's probably going to win more than that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't mind having said that. Stephen Marshall spent nearly a decade getting his ass handed to him. So, I mean, anything's possible.
He did. And as you said before, Labor parties here tend to be a little bit more conservative. They got kicked out when Jay Weatherill was starting to push the further left agenda. That's what happened. Got kicked out.
Yeah. And I guess at state level, that's the lesson to learn for the Liberals. Like don't go away from your core conservative values, because when the party does that, it becomes unelectable. Just like you can't. It's hard to out conservative guys like Malinakis and Kusantanis.
No,
it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, no, exactly right.
From a moderate position, I'm saying.
When we look at some of the other state members of Parliament, Nat Cook. Now, I reckon out of every member of Parliament, Nat Cook was putting the most amount of emotional blackmail. Every second post, or even every post, was about supporting the voice. She would do stupid things, like she'll put up a post saying, "If you don't know, ask. Here's your opportunity."
And then you ask the question.
And you ask a question, and your question gets deleted. It's deleted.
I was just astounded. I've never seen that from politicians in general. It was happening a lot. It was happening pretty much all the local members down here, except for Chris Picton. To give Chris Picton some credit, until the day before, he stayed out of it.
Yeah.
And then obviously the powers that be rang him and said, "Chris, for crying out loud,
you have to say something.
You've got to say something." And Chris probably gone, "Oh shit! All right, I've managed to stay out of it for this whole thing." But the rest of them, they were all piling in on the thing. And whenever you ask questions, and legitimate questions, they weren't gotcha moments or anything like that. They were just legitimate questions. And it wasn't just you or I asking them. Like random members of the public were asking them. And then you'd go back in there and with that question
was being deleted. And then people like Nat Cook will say, "Oh, well, I won't have misinformation or disinformation on my page."
Well, yeah, okay.
So for example, one of the posts that I put up that got deleted, one of the comments, when she said, "If you don't know, ask."
Yeah.
So I just said, one,
ask the question.
Will there be a Ghana representative on the Voice? 2, will the Voice be elected or selected?
Yeah. None of them liked that.
They didn't
they couldn't answer it.
So instead of answering it, they deleted it and said misinformation. Now, I'm not sure if anyone can say that a question is misinformation. People weren't providing information at all. They were asking questions. This was not the campaign of misinformation. This was the campaign of no information.
Yeah.
And there was nothing coming from the yes side.
Yeah.
And Australians, they cottoned onto it pretty
much. Oh, they did. Look, the mob always works you out, and the mob definitely worked out this campaign. They worked out Albo. They worked out these activists. I mean, to just imagine if this thing had got up, and you got people like Marcia Langton, and all the other Trotskys that are her mates, going in there, trying to tell Albo how this thing should look and how it should work. Like, holy moly, we dodged a bullet.
In a way, I'm wondering if Anthony Albanese dodged a bullet. Because you could imagine a situation.
No, he loves this stuff.
He does, but you could imagine a situation.
He'd love to have a hammer and sickle in the corner of our flag. I guarantee it.
Yeah, he would. But could you imagine? So just look at a stage where Australia voted yes.
Yeah.
They set up a voice. That voice is either elected or selected by the Aboriginal elite.
They didn't spend an
Canberra-based, but they should
have spent another few $100 million. Might have made all the difference.
That would have made the difference. But that voice then goes to the government and says, "We want to change the date of Australia Day. We want to do this. We want to do that." Yeah. And they've got to say no to it.
Of course not.
Maybe that's where the only benefit for him here is he won't be at odds with the position of the voice, because that would have put him in a very, very precarious position.
He's probably on a tightrope with that now. With the questions and question time about Makarrata and truth telling, whatever the hell that is, like all that stuff. I think he's still like, I think he's still in denial that this has gone down in flames. Like, he's still humouring or not batting away all the Makarrata stuff.
Voice, treaty, truth. That's the Uluru Statement from the Heart. And as Peter Credlin said so well, that's right. You can't get the trifecta if you miss the first leg. Australia has said no to this. He needs to put that on the back burner, and he gets to get back to cost of living. When you look at the stats that came in,
he doesn't know what to do about it.
The Voice was 17th on priorities.
Yeah, no one gives a shit about
cost of living. People are struggling with electricity and all these sort of things that are just going through the roof. Haven't seen my $260 saving, whatever it was supposed to be.
$275. I'm still waiting for
that.
Apparently, all the smart asses, when you ask about it on the ALP page, just when I'm really bored at night and I troll it a little bit, they always come back to go, yes, but that wasn't meant to kick in until 2025. And then when you fire back at them, so my electricity is going to be $275 cheaper than when he first got elected in 2025. And then your comment either gets deleted or the people just disappear.
Yes.
Because we all know that ain't happening.
It ain't happening. The fact that they even respond to those is quite laughable. They should not be going anywhere near it. But they have to.
They've got their standard lines for it, and then when you rebut those standard lines, they just disappear.
Yeah. At the flip side, so the week of the referendum, we saw some terrible things happening overseas.
Yeah.
When you look at what's happened with Israel and the terrorist organisation of Hamas doing some absolutely terrible things that, it has been the worst day for Jewish people in terms of lives lost and terror inflicted on them since Nazi Germany.
Since the Holocaust. Yeah.
That is something that I think every Western democracy needs to stand up and not just show solidarity, a word that gets thrown around too much. They need to make some really hard line statements to show that they are absolutely steadfast in their commitment for Israel and their right to protect their land, their people, and to make sure that Hamas never again can create such a problem for the Jewish people in Israel.
Yeah, look, it's very complicated, and we could almost do a whole episode on it, to be honest. But the whole situation there is very complicated. But the reality is, what happened on that Saturday, it wasn't the Palestinian people as such that perpetrated that, and that's what you've got to remember. But the problem is Hamas, they are the government in Gaza, and those people in Palestine are essentially prisoners. They're captive to Hamas. Now, how do you fix that? Yeah, it's terrible that you got to do a bombing campaign, and at some point in the very near future, I'm sure ground forces will go in.
Yeah,
and it's going to be terrible, and lots of innocent people will die. But what's the alternative? There's the alternative to sit back and just bolster your defences so it doesn't happen again, and let Hamas continue to obviously. That would be a threat.
Use that attackers.
That's right. They'll go. We won.
Yeah.
The reality is Hamas don't give a rat's ass about the Palestinians, and that's the problem. You've got a ideological terrorist organisation in charge there, and unfortunately, the only way to start correcting things there is to eliminate them. Now, once that happens, then the ball's in Israel's court. The ball will be in Israel's court as to whether they try to incorporate the Palestinian people into their economy and into their society.
Yeah.
If they don't do that, this will happen again in another 10 or 20 years' time, but it'll just be a different terrorist organisation. That's the thing. You've got to get rid of them. I support that, but then Israel's got to do it with a forward-thinking plan of we've got to somehow bring the Palestinians into their society and into their wealth, essentially. Because if they're going to be sitting there in camps or prisoners in Gaza or the West Bank, impoverished, this is just going to keep happening.
Yeah. And you said it before, we have to remember that there is Palestinians who are completely innocent bystanders to this. You're seeing some horrific images coming through of women and children, both in Israel and in Gaza, the Palestinians, going through things that you could not even imagine happening in our country here. Yeah. But what we need to remember, and what I think that the leftist protesters that love protesting over here, what they need to remember is Israel are fighting back from an attack that happened to them, and it is Hamas that is responsible for holding these people, these Palestinians, captive. They are hiding behind civilians. They are using the density. So it's not the fact that Israel is unleashing this hell on civilians. It's Hamas as a terrorist organisation holding their civilians absolutely to ransom. And what I'd love to see for these pro-Palestine rallies. And if there's anyone out there going to or organising a pro-Palestine rally,
they're probably not watching us, mate.
I don't think they would be. They might be just in a hate on a Saturday night. Go to those rallies instead of saying disgusting things like gas as Jews and kill the Jews at the Sydney Opera House. I want to see Palestinian rallies.
That was appalling.
Why are they not calling out Hamas?
How that to happen?
They're the ones that are saying Hamas is not Palestine. These people don't represent us. They do say that some of them.
Well, they elected them once. That's the problem.
The leadership though in these communities will say no. We are there to protest against Israel. Taking our land, invading our land, coming in, and
fronts.
I want to see them equally protesting against Hamas. I don't see any of that because Hamas is keeping Palestinians captive right now. Hamas is leading to the death of women and children in Palestine, Gaza. I want to see them protesting against Hamas because I'm not seeing that so far.
One thing you're saying, which is like a lot of the Arab states, there's a little bit of condemnation for Israel. They don't really like them at the end of the day. But there's a little bit of condemnation. But it's not outrage. Not outrage coming from the Arab states about this.
No.
And I think that's more to do with the fact that I think the Arab states know as well you've got to get rid of Hamas. Like the number one boogeyman, the number one enemy in that whole region is Iran. Yeah. And Iran is supporting Hamas, Iran's supporting Hezbollah, Iran's supporting rebels in Yemen, which is obviously undermining what the Saudi government's trying to achieve in Yemen. Now, I'm not saying what the Saudi government's doing there is good either, that they're just killing people en masse as well. But you got Iran that is destabilising the whole area, and they're not getting any blowback at all.
Yeah,
they got $6 billion given back to them. Now that's the real enemy.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got to. They've probably got to knock out Iran.
Well, Iran too. So all these things are linked. We've seen a lot of Iranian drones going to Russia, flying into Ukraine. I think the world's on a bit of a tender hook at the moment with a lot of these little spot fires coming up. You're going to see some strong leadership coming from America at the moment. I don't think Joe Biden is up to that. He's done, to his credit, he went to Israel, he showed up.
Yeah,
but he doesn't look like a strong leader.
No. I watched his speech the other night, and I've got to be honest. I was sitting there. I was really, really worried that he was going to
go to sleep.
I thought he was going to fall asleep. I think, God, Joe, just get through this. Like Benjamin Netanyahu, he's sitting there going, "Oh shit, this guy going to die in front of me." Like he must have been thinking that. Like he just looked like a dead man.
The one thing that it makes me think of, and sort of ties back to the voice stuff, and before the lefties get out there, I'm not saying that a voice would lead to Australia being like the Middle East at all. But what it does make you celebrate is living in a country where we have a constitution where we are all equals. We can celebrate the diversity of backgrounds where we have come from. Yeah. The things that unite us as Australians are far greater than the things that divide us. And we should never put race and division and identity politics into a constitution. Yeah. And it's another reason why I'm just really so proud of Australia for the way they voted in that referendum.
Yeah, there was there's no race element to that at all. It was just common sense.
Yeah,
and sometimes common sense prevails.
Sometimes common sense,
very rarely, but sometimes it does. And I think the referendum night, that was definitely common sense prevailing.
Yeah, well, it's also in a referendum, it's about an issue, and people need to put their voice forward. In the election, what we saw was small targets, and the real policies they weren't saying because they knew it would be offensive to voters, so they tried to make themselves this small target. I'm not Scott Morrison was basically the campaign.
Yeah,
they won post the referendum. That's what we've seen.
Oh, I mean, we've gone through this before, but there was a bit of its time factor as well with that.
Yeah,
and for there to be an its time factor, and for Labor Party just to have the slenderest of majorities. I mean, that I don't think that bodes well for that doesn't bode well for the next election. Like they might get more seats than the Liberal Party, but they're going to have to do deals with lunatics.
They'll have to do some deals if they want to keep governing. I really believe.
I think it's a no-brainer. I think how Western Australia is going to come back. I think there's going to be, the Liberal Party will pick up 4 or 5 seats in Western Australia.
Yep.
They can't pick up any more in Queensland. They basically got the whole show there.
But they'll hold it now.
I think
it'll be harder for Labor to take ground back in Queensland, as they have before. in other elections.
Yeah, that's right. But I think they'd probably pick up a couple of seats in Tasmania too, because I just think this referendum just showed just how out of touch some of those MPs are in the regions.
Well, the last election, right? As soon as Albanese came in, every lefty around the place was saying Australia has changed after 10 years of the coalition. Australia's becoming further left. The next generation's coming up.
What this referendum wins, they think that. You know?
What this referendum shows is they underestimated the support for Labor and Albanese versus the dislike for Morrison. And when you look at the vote and the values that was behind the referendum vote, the 33% of people that voted for Labor in the last federal election, they are on a very, very small margin. I think Peter Dutton, moving forward, needs to, you can't rest on your morals. The Voice is over and done with. Put that on the back burner now.
Oh, no.
People remember it. You don't need to be the one selling it now.
I was going to say, move on to the next thing. That's what he should be doing.
Nuclear energy is what he needs to go. So I think if he can stand up as a conviction politician, Anthony Albanese, and I think he is, Dutton, if he stays to nuclear energy, opposing things like the Voice, opposing whatever next random leftist idea Anthony Albanese comes up with, but he starts to sell his conservative vision, being nuclear energy, cheaper electricity, more reliable electricity. It will lead to industry and more jobs and more development and more investments, and those sort of things is where he needs to pivot to really quickly. In South Australia, that might be a little bit different for the fact that Malinauskas has brought in his legislative version of the Voice. What we'll see is a lot of the Indigenous communities now starting to, we know a lot of them are starting
to fight over who's going to get a gig.
Who's going to be the one on the gig. That's going to be messy.
Yeah.
I think the opposition here, and David Spears, needs to highlight that where he can. But I think he's more inclined, if he starts to pivot after this referendum, to things like payroll taxes. Yeah. If he wanted to say that South Australia is going to be the tax that abolishes or really reduces payroll taxes to drive industry and investment and jobs and wealth back into South Australia and be that point of difference, if you want to be the one state that has the lowest payroll tax in the country, that's something that he could pivot to and start selling that next message.
As a business operator, shouldn't have payroll tax anyway. It's just an absolute crock of shit. Like when it's just one of those taxes that there's lots of little taxes out there, but that's just one in particular that is just it's a disincentive to employ people.
Yeah, and
why do you reckon all the building industry and a lot of industries are going this way now? Contract people.
Yeah,
it's just they're trying to avoid that whack of payroll tax, that that whack of return to work levy and all that sort of stuff. That there's just tax after tax.
Well, if you're a small business owner or a medium to large business owner, you're paying tax on your wealth in terms of what you're generating from your business and any income you might be getting from that.
Yeah,
you're then paying your employees, and those employees too. Well, those employees
whack after another.
No, your employees are paying their tax on their wage, their standard tax they'll pay. You're paying a payroll tax.
No, I'm paying
people.
I'm paying
job
for them.
You're paying for them.
I'm just doing a bit of admin for the ATO, but yeah.
Yep. And then by the time they get their pay slip in their thing that's already been taxed 3 or 4 times by now, then they're going and they're getting petrol to drive home. They're getting taxed and bugging for that, for their rights to drive on the road, and they're getting taxed to the GST or everything they're having. There's just taxes and taxes and taxes.
Yeah. I mean, you have to have tax, you've got to pay for things, but
you're going to have.
I mean,
you do, but
let's streamline it a bit.
Streamline it and don't put a tax on jobs. That's what a payroll tax is. A tax on jobs.
Yeah, it's basically saying you can afford to employ X number of people and be paying out X number of dollars in salaries, so therefore we want a piece.
Yeah, and that's where we're going. It's very rare that a tax gets repealed.
Yeah,
new taxes seem to come all the time, and occasionally you do need to have that more strategic look at the whole taxing system and go, where have we gone too far? Where can we pull it back?
Well, we tried to with the GST, but the thing with the GST coming in, I mean, that was supposed to get rid of a lot of these taxes like payroll tax, land taxes. There was a lot of taxes that people assumed would be disappearing. The state governments went, thanks for the GST, but we'll keep those other taxes as well.
And then they put levies in place. So they get your waste levy that they charge for councils, which is why your council rates go up.
No,
the bins. and they do the emergency services levy, all the levies come in, which are another tax.
There's environmental with my business. There's environmental levies too. Like just a levy that I've got to pay every 12 months because of the pits I've got.
And I wish it was highlighted a little bit more, because come every election, we all look at the commitments made, and we know that this last state election, there was millions and millions of dollars in commitments from the Labor Party.
Yeah,
not too many people in the top, and that was when times were pretty good. We had low interest rates. The Reserve Bank was keeping things pretty well. CPI was ticking along at sort of between
the good old days,
1% and 2%. The good old days when we had Liberal governments around the country. But when times are good, you don't think about the repercussions too much.
No.
And so we then end up electing these people that have promised us the world, and we realised we pay for it. And I think all these taxes that everyone always complains for, well, if we ask the governments to just get back to the basics, they can start cutting back those taxes. But us, the consumers of government policy, we get sucked in hook, line, and sinker in every election.
We've just wasted $400 million on a referendum that was never going to pass.
We'll put it this way: so $400 million for a referendum,
drop in the ocean, but it's $400 million. Like, it's just like, seriously, guys.
Well, $400 million to hold the referendum.
Yeah,
$400 million to hold a referendum. $100 million for the Yes campaign or thereabouts.
Yeah.
It's $500 million.
Yeah.
$500 million. I'm not sure from the last census how many Aboriginal people are in this country, but if you divide it,
it's growing by the day.
It's growing by the day,
exponentially.
But if you amount per person that could benefit would be it'd be a bit of money, or some communities that you could put housing and development, jobs.
Well, yeah, it'd be a bit of money, but would it? Because by the time it went through the hands of 5 different bureaucracies that are already there to handle Aboriginal affairs and Aboriginal issues, there's probably 50 cents left at the end.
And how appalling! The week after the referendum, the Liberals come out and say it's quite clear Australia has voted. They want to see change. They want to see direct action in communities.
Yeah.
Let's do a royal commission into some of the terrible child sexual abuse in remote communities, remote Indigenous communities, which we know are prevalent. Let's do a royal commission to where the money. Let's do an audit into where the money is being spent, because, as you said, by the time this money filters down from Canberra and everyone gets their little fingers on it, the people that need it most, they're at the end of that chain. They're not getting it. Isn't it? We're not seeing that investment leading to any major outcomes. And I think that's something that I hope doesn't get lost through this process, making sure that the money is getting to where it needs to go, and the people who have been benefiting from this Aboriginal economy and filtering the money through to their own pockets, there's the accountability coming. And that's a core crux issue that needs to be addressed.
If this voice had got up, this would have been fantastic for all the bureaucracies, because they would have been able to go, all right, no worries. Well, we can sit back. We're basically immune now, because we're going to wait and see what the voice has to say. I think that's part of the issue with it as well, and part of the mechanics of the whole voice would have been that we're going to, they're going to basically, all the bureaucracies that should be getting smacked over the knuckles for doing such a poor job for the last 20, 30, 40 years, would have been able to just go, oh, we've had a reset now, we've got the voice, and now we're going to get it right. It would have been a get out of jail free card.
Yeah. Mark my words, we're going to see it now in South Australia. Come the new year, and this state voice gets rolled out, you're going to see people, looks like in the legislation, just say if you're in the Adelaide metropolitan zone, if you are a Ghana person, or if you live on Ghana country and you're from remote Queensland, that's where you can vote and that's where you can run. Either you have family ties or where you currently live. And what you're going to see is...
I guess Kime's out of it, isn't he?
Well,
has Kime worked out his family tree yet?
I don't think he has. He has. It's been published. But again, it'll be... I don't think that there's a process to go through. It's self-identification to put your hand up. It appears to be the same rigmarole. The scrutiny may not be there.
Yeah.
But essentially...
How dare you ask?
Essentially, you could have someone who has only just started identifying as Aboriginal because they've found ancestry going back 4 generations to remote Queensland, and they're a 20-year-old going to university in Adelaide, is putting their hand up to represent culture against a elder who has been here for, a 50, 60-year-old elder who has got direct family ties and knowledge and custodians of the land. Those two people can be up against each other in an election. It's going to be
it's all going to come down to who they vote for.
Yeah,
if they're of the left, they'll get a gig.
Yeah.
If they're a bit conservative, evil bastards, they're nowhere. And that's going to exclude a lot of elders, because a lot of elders are quite conservative, especially socially. They're quite conservative people.
Well, they are. A lot of the Aboriginal culture is a conservative culture.
That's right. Yeah, they're not. Yeah, I was going to say they're not. Most
it's the activist
folks I know are
quite conservative.
They're quite conservative, and they're not lefties at all.
Yeah,
No. And yeah, so it'll be interesting.
So that's something I think we're going to follow on this podcast, how that's going to be set up in South Australia. We're going to follow that pretty closely. We're going to do a bit of...
Well, they're really bringing to jam it through at like 11 o'clock on a Sunday night again? Or...
Well, it's already jammed through. So it's happening.
No, but the actual modelling of it and everything like that. Isn't that still to come? Like who's going to get how the election's going to be held and all that?
No, they've released that information, and now they'll be having that election in, I think...
I wasn't aware of that.
In February. So that was all rushed through, so no one's actually seen that.
Oh, okay. Well, there you go. See, I knew that the actual legislation had gone through, but I didn't realise the actual mechanics of it was already part and parcel.
Well, as we saw, a lot of Labor politicians said they had a mandate for this. The federal government got elected and the state government got elected. They had a mandate. Well, you know what?
None of them even talked about it before the state election.
In the state election, it was all about ramping. I didn't hear anyone talking about a voice to Parliament in the state election.
To be fair, the only person I ever saw anything about a voice to Parliament was Nat Cook. And that doesn't surprise me, because Nat Cook, I mean, she really hates all white people.
Yeah.
Let's be real, I love it. I love it every time, like this. Oh, and that's the other thing. Marcia Langton with we're not going to get a welcome to country anymore if we vote no. Please. Like, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of getting welcomed to my own country.
Well, I think she's going to backpedal on that pretty quickly now, isn't it? Like, although that as it was, that emotional blackmail, we weren't doing these things.
Yeah, no, it's going to kill the biggest cash cow for a lot of Indigenous people going around.
Yeah,
I mean, it's just absurd.
Yeah, that's something we're going to be following a little bit. But again, our message to Conservatives out there is don't get too caught up in this voice stuff. I know we've spoken about it a lot today because it's our first episode post referendum. Use it as an ability to look and say when you stand by your morals and your conviction, you will do well and you can sell an argument. But now pivot to the issues that really matter. We know that the voice was 17th on the list of what matters to Australians. Cost of living has to be the number one thing. Jobs, wealth creation, family networks and all those sort of things. Get back to those core issues. Start selling policies on them just as hard as we did The Voice. And that's when you'll see Conservatives starting to do a lot better in the polls and in elections.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, perfect. Well, episode 1 of season 2 is done. Please, if you're on there and you want to see more of this, we're on YouTube, Spotify, Facebook. Head on to all of our platforms. Give our Facebook a like. We give it a lot of updates around what's happening. Head on to YouTube, like and subscribe. The more people we have, the more people this can reach, and we can really let people know there's conservative voices here in South Australia, and I think it's better times to come. We are still here. We do, even if we're in a shed and push the quarter here.
It's my shed, mate.
It is. It's a nice shed.
Yeah, you like it?
Yeah, nice. We'll see you next time.
Easy. See ya.